We are here with legendary wide receiver Herman Moore, the great one, Mr. 84 himself, and a lot of news has been breaking out this week. Herman, and a coach was fired, defensive backs coach Aubrey Pleasant, after the Miami Dolphins game. What is your thoughts on this firing, and hear what you got to say?
I think that the firing is one where you're looking at what's going to be the quickest solution to having it placed on an individual or individual unit of this team in terms of some of the failures that they've had on defense. And when you look at it, they're going to look at Coach Pleasance and say, you know what, this is a secondary issue. I think it's a talent issue more so than anything. And it's the availability. There's some scheme things that are there. And typically that doesn't fall just with the position coach. So it's a little surprising that there is a position change. But then again, we're not inside. And because we're not inside, we don't know what has been discussed. And I will say this in all fairness, and being that person who comes from the inside, um, when you don't know, there's a lot of things that may be at play. So I don't want to speculate as to why they made that decision and why they decided to get rid of Coach Pleasant. But I do know this. Uh, they're looking to find answers, but they're also looking for ways to kind of tame what's going on right now because it's starting to really blow up. And some of the moves that are being made right now are going to come back to be something that is either going to help this regime move forward and say it was a great move by that from the coaching staff up to the scouting departments to the administrative side, or it's going to come back and say this is why this team can't win.
Clearly, the Lions defense has been not doing well as we're ranked 32 in the NFL. The secondary has been getting beat. If poor play continues, do you think there's a chance that more coaches potentially could let go, or is this something that they'll maybe change at the end of the year since there's only 10 games remaining?
Well, that's what's a little bit surprising, and that's why I say I think there may be more to this than what's being publicly put out there in a space for us to consume. And that is when you decide to let go one position coach versus looking at this is an overall defensive issue. I don't think it's just a secondary issue. Then there's a reason why you start with that particular coach. Maybe you see that as the area that is most impacted by that coach in terms of their ability to not get the returns. But as the losses continue, and they will have, I just don't see them running the schedule here and winning every game from here on out. So there's going to be additional losses. There's going to be additional issues and problems that may occur. And at some point, you're not going to fire individually the position coaches. So at some point, that's going to start to affect what happens with Coach Aaron Glenn. And it's going to be a matter of when does it cross that threshold that says, you know what, this is an actual defensive side of the ball issue that we need to address, which starts with the top.
Obviously, coaching issues, but there was a trade, a pretty significant trade before the trade deadline. Detroit Lions traded their tight end, TJ Hockenson, to the NFC North rival, Minnesota Vikings, in a surprising move, considering that he's a young 25-year-old talent considered to be a top 10 tight end in the NFL. What is your initial thoughts on this, not just as the player, but as the team going forward?
This was a little bit. I will say this caught me by surprise. I understand that he's coming up on a contract. I understand that maybe there's indication that it's going to be a difficult re-signing, which perhaps it could be, and perhaps they've had those discussions to say this is going to be a good time to basically go ahead and end this because no matter what he does between now and the end of the season, it's not gonna matter because we're not going to have that winning season or that playoff caliber season. So we're probably going to have no chance of signing him back next year. So let's try and see what we can get before we completely let this player go that's going to be leaving anyway. That is the only rationalization I can see in terms of why you would let a guy like TJ Hockenson go. And it's a little surprising only because you typically don't let star players go within the division. And that is the only thing I can think of that was a breakdown. There was no chance of re-signing him back, especially meeting whatever his needs were going to be as a free agent. So that's what made this decision a little bit easier right before the deadline. But You're trying to build talent, not lose talent. And to say that you can go out and replace him, a person who's in your system, a player who has gone through that rookie season, has gone through an injury season. And typically, what we see after that occurs, players start to really excel. And I would expect wherever TJ Hockenson ends up, if it's just, I don't know how long his deal was with Minnesota, and if they're going to have to re-sign him, obviously, and get him into a bigger contract at the end of the year, wherever he ends up staying long term, I think those are the better years of his career that those teams are going to get. So that's a surprise to me. That really is a surprise to me.
Brad Holmes came out today to the media and explained to the media that he would make this trade even if the Lions were 6-1 instead of 1-6 before the trade deadline. Do you believe that, or is that kind of speaking that we're not giving up even though they are as a front office?
It's hard to really decipher that one, uh, given what the situation is right now. Yeah, it's probably easier to say that. But let's say you have a healthy team. Let's say you are 6-1. And let's say he has agreed to become a long-term player at the end of the season, or that you were close, but you were going to wait to the end of the season to get him finally signed. I don't think the same move is made. Perhaps you can say that there's a case to be made to get rid of TJ Hockenson. I think there was a lot of underperformance that happened early in the season. There's no denying that. There's been some inconsistency in pass catching that we have not seen in him in previous years. But I do believe that he is starting to really catch rhythm, and he's getting back to the level what I think most of us see as really one of the better tight ends in the NFL, especially. I think he's still top 10. And when you let a player like that go, and you say so easily, I can let him go, then I look across the board and I go, where do you see, if you're looking at ranking the talent on this football team, where does a talent like TJ Hockenson rank? You're telling me he ranks near the bottom and he's expendable. And I look at this roster and I just don't see where it becomes so apparent and so easily done, that I have to agree with that. Now, I really like Brad Holmes. I think that he is a general manager and a person that this team has really looked at and said, you know what, he's come in and he's done some really, really good things. And long term, I think he has shown that he has the ability to put together a great team. But um, how we're evaluating players and talent, and be able to really see them long term and fitting into it, I just see a team that needs players, getting some future picks. I see it maybe as and I'll be brief on this one, is that they're tearing it down, truly tearing it down, as ownership has said, and they're just looking for volume of players. And if that is the case, then maybe there's other players you deal up as well. You don't stop at just a TJ Hockenson, because I don't think there's any players. When I start thinking about players that I'm going to keep, he doesn't come first to mind. Players that I go expendable, get rid of, that we need to go get someone better that's going to be able to build our team.
You're just talking about other players right there. What is in the minds of the players right now after you trade away an asset like a TJ Hockenson and you're 1-6? Are they starting to think, ooh, I got to worry about my career now? Is that the main focus? Are they a little concerned of the direction of the franchise? What do you think is going through the minds of a player right now?
Because of some of the moves that have been made, because of some of the things that we've seen kind of become undone this particular season versus last year, we saw them building and making some positive strides. But then this year, in the midst of everything that has happened, it seems like it's unwinding a little bit. I'd be more concerned with players saying, what are the reasons for me to stick around? And as you start to look at, I know this is a young football team, but you start looking at some of the key veteran players, those that are in their prime, what's going to give them the confidence to say, you know what, this is a place I want to stay, because as I get deeper into my career, when they're not keeping good players in their prime, what happens as I get to the backside, or more veteran side of my career? Will I have the loyalty of this football team? And right now, the Lions are kind of going backwards into some of the things they've done in the past, where there has just been no loyalty to some of the veteran players. And when it comes down to making moves, the long term is not really truly thought out versus the impact of going off of emotions and what is happening with the pressure that's being applied. Pressure is what builds championships, not just on the field, but also in the front office. You have to be able to make decisions that can weather that storm and look past it and have the confidence in saying, you know what, I'm going to stick to the game plan. I don't think the game plan was to get rid of TJ Hockenson. I don't think the game plan was to say, let's continue to trim the roster. I mean, and get rid of Darius Slays and get rid of some of these other players. That's just not the game plan when you're building long-term, sustainable, solid foundation of football programs. And so there's some concern there, and you wonder how much of that pressure is coming from the top, how much of that is being made specifically by the administrative people who are tasked with running the organization from that level. So I see this as really being some things that will get answered very quickly, because the wins and losses are going to answer that. And banking on the fact of future players, you don't know who they're going to be, that are going to save everything. I don't know.
You know, after the Dallas game, there was murmurs on the plane ride home of kind of dejection, feeling like just not getting there. And TJ Hockenson came out today at Minnesota and gave this answer towards the trade. He says, "That's really what we're here to do, is go somewhere and win some games," Hockenson said. "That's kind of the first time I've been able to say that, so I'm pretty excited. I really am." That is not the type of sentiment you really want to feel for your players on your football team. Do you think that this type of sentiment may be setting in for multiple players if this is happening to one in TJ Hockenson when he was here in Detroit?
Oh, 100%. Anytime you have a player of his caliber that is more or less saying, okay, I want, my goal is ultimately to win. I'm not seeing it as Detroit as being a place where ultimately I can win the football games and have the stability that I'm looking for as a player, and to have a winning legacy. Matthew Stafford leaves, same thing. You get other players who, Darius Slay sitting on a 7-0 football team in Philadelphia. That sends a really bad message to players that are currently on the team, players that have contracts coming up, that are a year or so out. And then also, as you're trying to lure talent in, who wants to come here? Who wants to do that? And I know it's not their intention, but you have to look deeper. You have to think deeper. I've been in this around this sport long enough, and I'm just speaking strictly from that of a player, but even being in the business world now, understanding culture, environment, uh, you know, team, and all these other things play a big part in the complete package and picture. And if they're not willing to look at it as a whole and stop piecemealing this and thinking, okay, I'm going to get players here because they like the coach, or I'm going to get the players here because they like a player and they're following a player, man, that's going to be here and there, and there's just no glue. There is no solidification that's going to take place. You have to build it based on legacy. You got to build it based on the fact that you have a winning tradition and you have a culture. And that's what I really felt that they were trying to accomplish here. And all of a sudden, it's like you're regressing back into, hey, it's not working, so let's just tear down. I mean, we've been there, done that. I've been out of the game for 20 years, and that's what it's been. Build up, tear down, bring in, let the good players go. And it's like, how do we keep getting this wrong? And it's not to beat up the Lions, man. I don't want anyone to think that. But when you look at this, I'm not going to ignore the business. I'm not going to ignore the player side. I'm not going to ignore the fact that these coaches don't want to be moving around place to place either. And right now, it's just, it looks bleak. It really, really does.
It is bleak. It's bleak for us Lions fans as well. So what do you got to say to Lion fans to keep that smile on your face? And what do you tell the folks to and how to subscribe to this channel?
Well, one, I tell them if they want to continue to hear us talk high level and really give some tremendous insight that comes without all the other emotion and all those, we just give it to you like it is. You got to subscribe. You got to subscribe to the channel to continue to get this exclusive content. So I will give that pitch. The other thing I will say to the Lion fans is this: we are number one. The Lion fan base is the number one fan base. It is the most loyal. Loyalty comes not with following a team that wins all the time, but sticking with those that continue to break your heart. So I say to the Lions fan base, you are the Super Bowl of Lion fans. You are the All Pros. You are the Pro Bowlers. You are the MVPs of professional sports. And therefore, I salute you. I continue to thank you for all the things they've done in my career, and the fact that you continue to follow an organization that will have you scratching your head sometimes on moves that are made. But again, I'm not throwing them under the bus as much as I want them to be winners. But at some point, you got to start doing things a little differently than what you've done in the past. You can't keep repeating the same thing and think you're going to get different results.
Hey, if the Cubs can do it at some point, we will be able to do it. It will happen. I appreciate you giving your thoughts on this big news as the Lions do a little bit of turmoil around here. So appreciate it, Herm.
Always, I appreciate it.
Perfect.